Good morning. Today is Monday morning. It is actually the week after Father's Day, if you knew that, Pastor Eugene. It is the 27th of June, Monday morning, and today we've got a spicy episode for you today. But we'll be talking about social media and a surprise topic this morning, Pastor Eugene. So sit back, relax. You're listening to the Dear Church podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang.
I am Elon Musk.
I feel like you. I mean, you're not Elon, but I feel like I haven't seen you in a long time. But I saw you recently.
I saw you yesterday.
Oh my God.
What's wrong with you?
No, we just missed you. But how are you doing, Pastor Eugene? New father.
Yeah. Tired, happy, same time.
Tired and happy.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been sleeping much?
A little, here and there.
Well, we wish you the best. But Pastor Eugene, I know that this week we're supposed to be talking about tweets from big Eva pastors. And I was just kind of combing through the tweets, and as I was preparing for this episode, I was just looking for dangerous tweets. And I think as I was going through it, I realized I was looking for bad tweets that pastors had made, and it didn't seem to be a gracious and loving exercise as I was even doing it. And I know I was texting you throughout the process too. And so I wanted to originally do this so that our listeners would be able to discern through even tweets and social media posts from trusted pastors. But I didn't want to go digging for evidence to stack up against ministers. And so I aborted that mission. And I thought it may be helpful for us to just kind of maybe speak in generalities, so that it may be helpful for our listeners. And so, the question is really, how can we as Christians wisely discern what is posted on social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it might be? How can we discern wisely what is truth and what is not true, even when it's posted by well-renowned pastors or ministers or leaders?
Use the Bible.
Use the Bible. I was hoping this would go maybe for like 5 to 10 minutes, but use the Bible.
Read the Bible. Study the Bible. There you go.
And also, I think just kind of not responding or reacting out of emotion, I think would be good too. I think we've talked about that multiple times throughout this past year.
I don't know what context.
Not just, for example, like if it's a tweet or if it's an Instagram post, I think maybe not just taking everything at face value, but really discerning through the word, I think, like you said.
I think it's a distinction that you have to make now because we live in a social media world
Yeah.
where ideas get passed and people will adopt these ideas, and you see it taking these ideas take effect much quicker than it would have maybe like 50, 60 years ago, even though television also sped up that process. Before television, the internet, whatever it was, people had to do it by carrier, like by mail, long form letter, and things like that. And so if I needed to send you some information, it needed to go to you by a courier. It might take a few days or a few weeks, depending on where you live, how far you were from me. And that's how information would get passed. And then when I receive it, or when you receive it, you would have almost all the time you needed to kind of, let it digest, meditate on it, try to figure out exactly what it meant, right?
Yeah.
Now it's instantaneous. Now I can just write, I think Sam is poop.
Oh,
And then it'll just go out to the internet like in, a millisecond.
yeah.
And everybody will know what I think.
Yeah.
All my followers, at least. And
Yeah.
if it gets retweeted, if it gets shared, then, potentially millions of people will see that and be affected by that thought. I think the concern that you initially had is a valid concern because precisely because of this kind of
Yeah.
speed in which an idea can catch fire and just go. Um, Especially when it's from, let's say, a quote unquote trusted, person in the evangelical circle, whether it's a minister or not.
Mm.
And especially if the idea is bad, but it's deceptively like written. So it sounds really good, but what is it really saying? And so we have parsed some of those
Mhm.
posts like from Jackie Hill Perry,
Yep.
and people still like Jackie Hill Perry. It's not like people are going to listen to this and start hating her.
Right.
But then we pointed out the danger of her, retweeting or putting up into the platform Louis Farrakhan, and doing things like that where she wouldn't even apologize. She would just double down and saying, you white people, this and that.
Mhm.
So I don't think, that was a healthy response. Maybe she really is a great person personally, but her social media presence is not good. And the things that she posts up are not good. And so the reason why we address them is because the Bible does say we need to address wolves and we need to address deceit. And so we do address them. We don't hate on the person. We don't just go on and just, you don't tear a person down for no reason, but we want to address the ideas. And this is why I think this generation has the biggest problem. And that's why I think you're also struggling. So I want to address that struggle
Mhm.
is because we can't separate the idea from the person, just like we can't separate the identity that people claim from reality. But at the same time, you can't separate what they say from the person themselves. So if you said something and I said, Sam, I think you're wrong, you would get hurt. But then I think there will be a deeper level of hurt because you are now completely attached to this idea, especially if you decide to put it on social media. You think you did your due diligence, you spent your hours mulling over the words, the content of your phrase before you tweeted it, or, mulling over your picture before you posted it, whatever it is. And so when someone gives you pushback, you just call them a hater or a troll. And there are haters, there are trolls, but it doesn't mean everybody's a hater. It doesn't mean everybody's a troll either. And so there's a flood of responses, and it's hard to really measure. And so I think we just default one or the other because we can't handle, like, let's say, a million different responses in a nuanced way. We'll just handle like all my haters can, blank,
Yeah.
or, all you guys are my fans. I love you, blank, or whatever it is. Right. And so I think what we need to do is we need to go back and debate ideas. I don't care if it's from someone like reputable that we believe in. If the idea is bad, we must say the idea is bad.
Mhm.
And I don't think what we mean is disrespect,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
yeah, we definitely don't want to get into just disparaging people, but there is a difference that people need to understand. When we attack an idea, we're not attacking the person. But if the idea is really bad, it's like thoroughly corrupt, or it's really deceitful and deceptive, then we need to call that out. We need to
Mm.
call that person to account as well. Why'd you post something like that when it is clearly in a deceptive manner? Why did you, say it in the way you did,
Mm.
and things like that? And so I think it's important we do that. We hold people up to count because all of these younger baby Christians look up to celebrities.
Right. Right.
And it's no different in the church. We have celebrity pastors, we have celebrity Christians, that these young people look up to. And when they say something, people just eat it up. It's like, fire. And then, we just want to affirm them
Yeah.
immediately without letting it sink in. It's like, well, why did they say this or that? I think it's important that we parse some of the ones, especially the ones that went viral,
Mhm.
not the ones that, have like 5 shares. No one cares about that. But The ones that go viral and they have like maybe thousands or hundreds of thousands or maybe even million shares or retweets and things like that. And we need to point out why this is not biblical or why this is a bad idea if we did go with it.
You brought up wolves before, and this is something that I've always wondered too. Is um, obviously we don't know these big evil leaders on a personal level, um, but how can you discern and distinguish between a wolf and a lost sheep? How can you even discern between the two?
Well, I think you bring up multiple points, but number one, I want to address what you said. We don't know these people personally,
Hmm.
and my response is it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter that I don't know Tim Keller. If he says something wrong, it's something that we ought to point out,
Right.
especially me who's been entrusted with the care of a local congregation.
Hmm.
If someone, let's say 90% of our congregation knows who Tim Keller is, read his
Yeah.
books,
Yeah.
follow his tweets, and then he's saying some weirdo stuff, it's important that we point it out.
Yeah.
Um, and so it doesn't matter if you don't have a personal relationship. The idea is what matters.
Hmm.
And that's what we need to challenge. And then if they continue to do this, this is what Paul says in his first letter to Timothy. Um, yeah, maybe you could read that. Chapter 1, 18 to 20.
This is First Timothy chapter 1, verse 18 to 20. This charge I entrust to you, Timothy, my child, in accordance with the prophecies previously made about you, that by them you may wage the good warfare, holding faith and a good conscience. By rejecting this, some have made shipwreck of their faith, among whom are Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I have handed over to Satan that they may learn not to blaspheme.
Yeah, I don't think Paul knew Hymenaeus and Alexander. They weren't like best buds or anything like that. But he called them out, and they are
Yeah,
forever written in the scriptures to their shame.
as bad guys.
Yeah. And so Paul does that. One thing that we're reminded of in the passage that you've read is that this is warfare, that we are at war.
Yeah.
This is a spiritual war that we are at, and we can't just, you know, think this is just, I don't know, apple pie or something like that.
Hmm.
This is not just some kind of pool date we're having. This is a spiritual war, and we need to fight the good fight, right? Run the race. We're not here to lounge and, sunbathe. That's not what we're here to do. And so when someone is not holding to the faith consistently over and over and over again, in fact, they go into blasphemy, that's when you even call that person out, right? But remember, he doesn't call them out immediately. He talks about holding on to the faith, waging the good fight, right? Making sure your conscience, which has been, remade and given new purpose and readjusted, realigned, I should say, in Christ,
Hmm.
is good, right? And so you can't reject that. You can't reject what's clear in the gospel. I get there are you know, some things that we could debate on, like our Baptist brothers and sisters, our Reformed Baptist brothers and sisters. We can debate on that, but we can't debate on the basics of the gospel. We can't debate on, let's say, the Trinity.
Following up with what you with the answer that you just gave, um, what's some wisdom that we can have as we discuss these wrong ideas? Because I think it could even lead to, guess what he said or guess what she said. It's so wrong. Or how could you say that?
I think it's important you pray for your leaders, pray for the elders of your church, because they are the ones that have been trusted with doctrines and teaching
Yeah.
and leading the church. So it's really up to them to teach properly. So continue to pray for them. And, whoever your elders are, they will not be perfect. And they won't agree with you on everything. You won't agree with them on everything, but they need to teach properly, right? And
Yeah.
so, what we are charged to do as members of the church is to pray for our elders so that they can, judge rightly. They wouldn't do anything wrong. They wouldn't go overboard. And so, by the grace of God, our churches have been surviving, and many have been thriving, and our church has been growing, except, of recent years. I think
Mhm.
we have studies out coming out now where, we're at an all-time low of Christian people who identify as Christian, right? Who go to church and things like that. And now I think recently I heard even like belief in God is at an all-time low. And so in our country. And so this is something that we need to continue to fight.
Yeah.
This is spiritual war. And, spiritual war is about lives. It's about souls. And so God has called us to fight. And so we must.
I guess what I wanted to get more into is, and I know that you're addressing calling out false teaching or perhaps wrong teaching through the leadership of the church. But I guess what I'm also wondering is, even in day-to-day conversation, what is some wisdom that we can have in talking about certain things that pastors may have said, certain things that other leaders may have said, um, because I think it could possibly go into the realm of gossip and slander. So how do we wisely discern between that?
I mean, that's easy. It's something that we said before is
Hmm.
stick to the ideas. Don't stick to the person. Stick to the ideas, discuss the ideas.
Hmm.
If it's a bad idea, dismantle that idea, which is hopefully what we do here.
Yeah.
And then if it's a consistently purported idea given by a person, then we ask and we pray that that person would repent and turn away from, his or her continuance of promulgating these really bad ideas or evil ideas or deceptive ideas.
So I guess going back to the earlier question, um, how do we also discern between wolves and lost sheep? How can we tell the difference?
I said it.
Oh, you
You
did?
gotta, yeah. I mean, you gotta trust your leaders. You
Oh,
gotta,
yeah.
make sure your elders are teaching you properly. You gotta
Mhm.
know the Bible. You have to study the Bible, and it's the Spirit of God that gives us discernment. We don't just, wind up with it just because we want it or something to that effect.
Mhm.
We must seek it, but it's something that God gives, and this is something that God promises, and we hold on to, like James 1:5.
James 1:5 reads, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him."
Yeah, we have a God who wants to give us wisdom. He wants to give us discernment. Why would he want to keep that from us? But we must ask and trust that he's the one that gives generously.
Thank you for that. Pastor Gene, I thought it would be great if we could just take a little bit of time and just talk about you for a little bit. I mean, not talk about you, I guess, per se, but just kind of pick your brain on certain things that have been going on in our church and in our life, kind of like a get to know Pastor Eugene better type of deal. Is that okay?
Eh.
It'll be great. So I guess first question: what is it like being a new father? I know you already kind of shared this already, but
Did I share this?
you did a little bit. You said
Okay.
it's tiring and happy at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, it's only been a month. So,
Any advice for future fathers in their first month?
like you?
Or others, yeah.
I think people always give advice, and I like listening to them. They might not all agree,
Mhm.
but I still like listening to them. So every like parent had some kind of advice to give, which I appreciate, especially in our church because they say it out of love.
Yeah.
And so my advice would be to listen to all the advice you can get, and you have to use your own discernment. After all, in the end, it's your kid. God has entrusted you with this responsibility, so you have to raise this kid, whether it's a boy or girl. We'll know by the time of the release of this podcast, but
Oh,
we're having Sam's kid's gender reveal, right?
yeah. I think I know what he will be.
So we'll see next week if Sam is right.
I know what she will be. um, but I wanted to also just pick your brain about um just I guess our church and ministry. I thought people may be interested in hearing this. How has preaching through First Samuel been? I think a lot of us have been blessed by the messages in First Samuel, but one thing that I'm wondering is how has it been for you as you've been meditating and studying First Samuel and preaching through First Samuel?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know of many people that preached through First Samuel. It was harder than I thought to get, let's say, maybe some other sermons on it and things
Mm,
like that. But I was pretty convicted that we should go over First Samuel in particular. Everybody knows who David is. Everybody knows that he was a man after God's own heart. But in what way? How did God prepare him? What was there? And it's been kind of really good for me personally because it's just something that we can continue to testify about. Is that as you mine the scriptures, you continue to mine its riches, and it's inexhaustive. So even when I read through one chapter of First Samuel, and it could be like the chapter we did 2 Sundays ago
yeah.
with David and Goliath, where you can continue to mine and mine and mine, and you'll still come up with more and more treasure
Mhm.
that God has for his people as you read and study, meditate on God's word, and the Spirit of God reveals it. And I think this is what our church members are also recognizing. And so I think that's a great thing. So even if we, let's say, went back and did a sermon series again on First Corinthians, I think there would still be new riches,
Yeah.
um, in the sense where maybe the main ideas will be the same,
Mhm.
but how it's applied, in what way it impacts us today, personally and corporately, and how those things change, and how some of those things are weightier because of where we are now. Maybe we did miss a few things, and maybe we could spend a little more time on this topic, things of that nature. And so this is what I really enjoy about us studying the Bible. And the thing about that also is we only get to do it once a week,
Yeah.
which is something that I'm hoping will change in the near future, where we'll also have an evening service
Mm.
as well.
Any tips on how to be consistent in our Bible reading and prayer? I think this is something that people may have difficulty with, just the consistency of it. So, any tips on how to be consistent in our Bible reading and our prayer?
Yeah, I think like in any discipline, you just got to get into the habit of it. And you first start off where you can start off. That there's so many devotionals and guides now. Um, it's pretty easy to get started. I think it's about keeping it. So people all go to the gym on January 1st.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a
Well, second, because it's normally closed on the first.
right. And then they drop off by March or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
I think that's like that with any good discipline. No one says going to the gym is bad, but they're like, well, I'll just work out at home. I'll do some push ups or
Mm.
I'll just jog. And then people don't even do that after a while.
Yeah.
You just have to be serious about your physical health. You just have to be serious about your fitness. In the same way, you have to be serious about your spiritual health and fitness as well. And so we want to, remind ourselves, sometimes you got to hype yourself up, and you got to do the things that you love. What's your favorite workout? And you got to make sure you got to put that in your regimen
Side
because
race.
side races, yeah. And you got to keep putting it in there, and then work out, you know, just enjoying it. And I think we were meant to enjoy reading the word and spending time studying God's word.
So, just keep at it, is
Yeah.
your advice.
Yeah.
Be consistent.
Yeah.
Another pretty serious question is, how can we get out of a sin that we can't really seem to shake off? Whether that's pornography, anger, or lust, or laziness, bitterness, or any type of addiction. Do you have any pastoral wisdom for us of how we can get out of this sin that we can't really just seem to get out of?
I think that's a good question. If someone really wants to know the answer to that, I think that's the first step of that deep desire of wanting not to sin, understanding that it's because of sin that God had to sacrifice his son for us. Jesus went through what he did. If we didn't sin, then we wouldn't have needed that atonement, right?
Yeah.
But why would we keep on sinning when it has been atoned for? And there is that battle that we saw in the Romans 7, where we don't do the things we want to do and we do the things that we don't want to do. So it is a struggle, and that struggle is real. And we have multiple ways of fighting this. And one is exactly what Paul was sharing in Romans 7. By doing this, he is speaking truth. He's speaking out truth. And I think that's what we also have to do. We need to speak out truth. You need to say it out loud. You need to, as Martin Lloyd Jones says in his book, Spiritual Depression, preach to thyself, right? And so we need to preach to ourselves. And number two, I think people's automatic go to is to find accountability, meaning find a partner to help you in all this.
Mm.
And I think that's good. It's a good desire. And I think you should find an accountable partner. But I think you should first pray. I think you should first pray. I think you should first understand the seriousness of it and then find the accountability partner. I don't think you should run to accountability first. I'm not saying you don't get accountability. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying even though you eventually get there, it's not step one. Step one is you pray, and step two, maybe get that accountability partner after. Because as you pray, you understand the gravity of and the seriousness of the sin that you are committing, and how it displeases God, how God is angered by this, and God will eventually discipline you. Maybe there will be a fear instilled within you as well, which is a good thing. And so, all these things are designed to help us become more sanctified. In the end, we need to remember our telos, our purpose, our end goal. And that is, we will be glorified. We will not be sinners any longer. And God will give us a glorified body as well. And so are we moving toward that direction? Do we have hope that has been given to us? This elpis that God has given to us, which is not just wishful thinking, but it's a secured hope that we have in Jesus Christ. That's what we mean by elpis, that we can always look forward to in our fight against sin. So whatever it is. And I think it's great that we have people in our church that will stand alongside each other. And even if, let's say, you're not my accountability partner, it doesn't mean that you're not praying for me. So this whole idea of accountability partner, the only reason why I'm giving slight pushback to it is because people only think it's about this one-on-one accountability partner and that's it. No, the whole church is involved. We're all praying for each other. And there may be some people that are closer that you share more intimate details with, but we're constantly praying for each other for our sanctification. And that's what we have been called to do.
What is an area that you think our church CGS needs to grow the most in?
I think it's holiness. And this is something that we pray for every week in our Saturday morning prayers. It's a desire to become as God has called us to be. It's a desire to become like Christ. And to grow in that, not just the desire to grow in that holiness. I know I mentioned sanctification, but that may be the most important thing that we need to understand about ourselves. Our job now is to become sanctified. That's what we need to do. The fact that it's like not number one on our list is a concern. If it isn't, that is. I mean, if it is, it's great, right? That's great. Continue to be sanctified. But a lot of people want to just give into this complacency and just be like, you know what? God is going to do this for me. Eventually, I'll just have to live with this or whatever it is. No, that's not how we ought to think. And we ought to continue to be sanctified. We ought to, really want to be holy. And then you will get pushback from the world. It's like, what? People will say, why are you so Pharisaic? Or why are you such a legalist and things like that. So they'll confuse being holy with legalism. They'll confuse loving what God has commanded us with perfectionism. All these are bad things, right? These are bad things because in the end, legalism or, this Pharisean way of doing things wasn't abiding by the law, which is what Jesus was, kind of exposing within the Pharisees. They weren't following God in the way they ought to, and that's what Jesus exposed. So legalism isn't following God's laws at all. Following God's law is following God's law. And so, I think there's that kind of odd pushback these days on wanting to be holy and people giving you, even from within the church, saying, oh, don't be so legalistic. You need to
Right.
rely more on grace. I think it's really troublesome because I think the more you talk in that kind of attitude, what really shows is your heart and desire is not for God. That's just what it is. And I'll never forget like the experiences that I grew up with, which really, you know, shined a light on this topic. Things like when I was traveling with a friend's dad, his family, and my friend, I was traveling and it was Sunday. I really wanted to go to church. And he said, oh, my friend's dad said, oh, God will forgive us if we don't go to
Yeah.
church today.
Yeah.
And I was a kid. I remember even hearing that, thinking, there's something oddly wrong about this. But because, he's an elder, I'll listen to him. My grandpa, when I was very young, like in elementary school, I remember asking him, Grandpa, why don't you go to church? And he told me, well, I went to church when I was a kid, so I don't really have to go now. And I
Mm.
remember even as a kid, I thought that was weird.
Yep. Yep.
And that
Yep.
wasn't my legalist side. I wasn't judging the elder or my grandpa. I was genuinely thrown off because even at that young age, it just didn't make sense. Um, and so I think we confuse the two now, which is very unfortunate, which is why I think discernment is something our generation is sorely lacking. If we don't like something, we already have a category to put it in. So if you say something to me and I don't like it, I already have a category. I'll call you a bigot or racist or
Yeah.
a legalist or whatever it is. And I'll just put you in the category instead of addressing the idea.
Mm.
So, like I said before, going back to some earlier points I've made, it's all ad hominem now. It's all personal attacks. And that's not what we do here, but people will think it's ad hominem too. So, why are you talking bad about? I think the people that we mentioned in the past are people like not just Perry, but Keller.
Hmm.
You'd be like, why are you attacking him? I never attacked him. I never said anything bad about him. I said his tweet was bad, and it was actually not helpful at all. In
Yeah.
fact, it was if we needed to consider some of the weightiness of that particular tweet, I would say it's nothing. It
Hmm.
weighed nothing. It in
Hmm.
fact took away from us if we were to take that tweet seriously. And so, this whole third wayism that, some people are trying to adopt, I think has is showing it, like we're seeing the results of it, right? The third wayism that people are trying to do, and they're nothing. They're actually more corrupt. It's not tolerance at all. It's just giving in to the enemy. And it's like, well, I disagree with, your transgenderism, but I'm not going to say it. And I'm going to call you by your preferred pronouns.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
like, what are you doing then? You're doing nothing to stand in the gap or to give them the truth. And so I think it's important that we remember those things as we try to continue to be holy.
So holiness. Thank you for that. Um, what has been the hardest part of pastoral ministry this year, and what has been the biggest joy of pastoral ministry this year thus far?
This year,
It's June, so yeah.
it's only been 6 months. Yeah. I don't know if I really had a personal difficulty.
I mean, not a personal difficulty, I
Yeah,
guess.
I
More of
think
like
there's always seasons. There are seasons where it's difficult. There are seasons where it's good. I think there's wisdom to be garnered.
mm,
When you go through a difficult season, I think it's because you have not been prepped. You don't have the strength for it. You're lacking in something. That's why it's difficult.
mhm,
Meaning you're always going to eventually get into a difficult season. Um, but hopefully you've learned from the past and you won't go into a difficult season because like the same ones in the past because
yeah.
you've overcome them. This year, I don't know if I've had many difficult parts besides the regular struggles and Um, yeah, I just really I think a more difficult time is coming where we'll see a breaking up of fellowship between the people that I used to fellowship with. I mean, but I think it's inevitable because of the doctrines that we hold to.
Yeah.
And so if you don't hold to biblical doctrine or orthodox doctrine, if you don't hold to the five solas, if you don't hold to the things that we believe that the Bible is teaching us, it's hard for me to continue to have fellowship with you. And so I think there is that continual sifting that is happening.
Mm.
And it's not because of any kind of, criteria I have set up. I think we just go with biblical criteria. So those hardships will come. At the same time, I think joy is right around the bend because of what we have resolved to do, because of what, God has convicted me to do as well, all by the grace of God. Glory to God. We've had new brothers and sisters come join us in our church
Yeah.
and they're fellowshipping with us. I had new people come listen to our sermons and say, that was a familiar story. And yet, I never heard your take on David and Goliath, for
Hmm.
instance, but it was biblical. And I really like that last part that they said, but it's in the Bible.
Hmm.
And so this is something that I'm hoping to continually see in our church is, when I say something in the sermon, people will say, well, yeah, it's in the Bible, obviously, things like that, right?
Right.
And so this is where we started with, even our journey and trek to being more reformed, to being complementarian, to being more, orthodox in that sense,
Mm.
and finding the joy in like following the Bible is great. This progressive liberalism in Christianity actually destroys the church. And so finding the joy in that has been also a really joy for me to witness among our church members and attendees.
I think you're always thinking about the church, even in your free time. I know you're always thinking about the church, about our church. What are some things that have been on your mind as of late? Just really picking your brain here. This is kind of like the pastoral comment section of our members meeting
It's on my mind.
because you're always thinking about the church, and I know that I think you share a part of that during our members meetings during the pastoral comment section.
Ooh,
Huh?
Roe v. Wade just got overturned
Just now.
just now.
Wow, that's great news. Wow, this is live.
This is not live.
This
This
is
is still recording.
I know, but recording Roe v. Wade just got overturned. Thank God.
Yeah. People have made threats that there would be, what is it, a night of violence? What did they call it? Night of violence if Roe v. Wade gets overturned against
Wow,
churches and pregnancy centers. Night of rage, that's it.
a night of
So
rage.
DC churches, especially churches in New York City, churches in these big cities, please be careful.
So, anything that's been on your heart, on your mind, have I been on your heart and mind?
Yeah, especially since you're gonna be a father soon.
Yeah, to a lovely son, to a lovely daughter. Um, light two questions as we wrap up. What books are you reading?
There's a new book by Al Mohler.
Oh, there is.
Yeah. It's about the parables of Jesus. That's good. And also, I don't have it with me. It's at home. Let me. Um, yeah. There's also a book. It's called About Face.
About face.
About Face. Yeah. The Odyssey of an American Warrior. The Odyssey. Yeah. And it's about. It's a Colonel Hackworth writes about his experience in the Korean War.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a very, very thick book.
Hmm.
Very thick book. So yeah, it's something that you could read like maybe a chapter a day and then just get wisdom from, yeah,
About face.
yeah.
Gotcha. Um, are you watching any shows? Any good shows out there?
I just started yesterday a show called True Blood. Blue
Oh,
Blood. Blue Blood.
isn't
I'm
that
sorry.
the
True Blood
police
is some
vampire?
vampire thing.
Yeah,
Blue Blood. Yeah.
very different shows.
Yeah, Blue Blood is about NYPD cops. It was recommended to me by a sister in the church.
Mm.
She said that it's really good and that I have to watch it. So I watched like 2 episodes.
Have you ever watched Stranger Things?
No,
I started watching it during my quarantine recently, and it's not as good as everyone says it is,
I don't know. It doesn't look very appealing to me.
and it's not that strange. So I don't get it. Um, but
I did see Doctor Strange though, because it
where
came out on video.
it came out,
Yeah,
was it
it's on Disney Plus.
was it weird? I heard it's not as good as everyone says it is.
It's not good. Oh, who said it was good?
No, no, like people were anticipating for it to be good
No,
because
it's
the
not good.
Marvel
There's
movie.
there's no consistency within people who try to make this multiverse thing happen.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like
tough.
fetch. It's not gonna happen.
Yep.
And so multiverse, I'm not gonna spoil it if you haven't watched it, but it like multiverse means like each universe is distinct and different
Mm,
because you don't want there to be a God, right? Because God is the ultimate reality. So you want to have this theory of multiverse, which the ancient Greeks also had. But there is something that connects the multiverse. I'm like, then it's not a multiverse, bro.
that's
It's just
true.
one universe. If everything is connected, don't get me started. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was meh. And then the thing that was apparently consistent throughout all the universe is this one evil thing. Not a
Mhm.
good thing, but this one evil thing,
Yeah.
which is so dumb. But I mean, yeah, the whole premise was full of hole. Like it was dumb, and the plot was full of holes. But that's what you get for trying this whole multiverse thing. It's the same thing with time traveling movies. There's so many plot holes because it's
Yeah.
impossible to make a time traveling movie without plot holes.
Mm,
Because you just can't do it because
mm,
it doesn't work that way. It's like trying to make 2 + 2 = 5 and then you're wondering why it doesn't make sense because it
mm.
doesn't equal 5. But yeah, time is linear. It's headed somewhere. It's going to end up somewhere.
The
And you have to figure
eschaton.
out, yeah, you have to figure out what it is instead of trying to see if you can go back and forth. And there's one reality.
Mm,
And so I think when people try to, I think the creativity that people want to express is they want to, see if they can conjure up other realities, other forms of truth by saying you could, jump around in time or you can, go into multiple different universes. Yeah, I don't think it works.
Speaking of time, our time is up for this morning. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next week as we will be talking about some current events that are happening in our world. Um, Definitely, we'll be talking about Roe v. Wade. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith.
Peace.
Peace.